December 7th, 1941, was the last day in history after which the world map would change forever. A disaster was about to strike a naval base, one that no one could have imagined. On one of the battleships at the base, there was an African-American cook named Doris Miller. Every morning, after sunrise, he served breakfast to the Navy officers and then went to collect their laundry. At exactly 7:57 a.m., Miller heard a siren. It was the kind of siren no one ever wanted to hear during service. He rushed outside, and to his shock, the sky was filled with Japanese bomber planes. In the blink of an eye, it felt like the Pearl Harbor naval base was hit by a catastrophe. The Japanese aircraft began targeting and destroying American ships one by one. This attack was carried out on the Pearl Harbor base. Today, we will explore why Japan had the audacity to attack a country as powerful as the US, why Doris Miller, a cook, was awarded one of the nation's highest honors, and why the US dropped nuclear bombs on Japan. Our story begins in 1941, during World War II, when the US was putting everything at stake to help China. Yes, the same China that the US now openly opposes in 2023. By then, 3 years had passed since World War II started. On one side were Germany and Italy, while on the other side were Britain, the Netherlands, and France. The US had no part in this war and remained completely neutral. After the losses of World War I, America wanted to stay away from wars happening in Europe and Asia. However, there was one country continuously troubling America: Japan. Due to a lack of natural resources, Japan was rapidly invading neighboring territories to meet its needs. Japan had already taken over Korea, Taiwan, and large parts of China. It also had its eyes on territories near the Pacific Ocean, such as the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. But these territories were colonies of powerful nations. Malaysia belonged to Britain, Indonesia to the Netherlands, and the Philippines to the US. Japan's aggressive actions were unacceptable to these countries. Adding to the tension, Japan was supported by Adolf Hitler. In July 1941, the US decided to stop supplying oil to Japan. Japan, which relied on the US for 80% of its oil needs, was now in trouble. The US gave Japan a condition: it would resume oil supply only if Japan withdrew from China. This put Japan in a difficult position. On one hand, leaving China would make the world believe that Japan had surrendered to the US despite Hitler's support. On the other hand, without oil, Japan's situation would weaken rapidly. Japan decided it would not leave China, but instead made secret plans to capture Indonesia for its oil. However, this was easier said than done. Indonesia was a Dutch colony, and to reach it, Japan first needed to capture the Philippines, which was an American territory. Japan knew very well that if it attacked the Philippines, the US would retaliate from its Pearl Harbor base in the Pacific Ocean. But with its oil reserves running out, Japan had no other choice. Japanese military leaders decided to launch a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, destroy the base entirely, and then easily capture the Philippines. Japan began preparing for the attack. It assembled a fleet including 2 battleships, 39 submarines, 30 destroyers, and 414 bomber planes. These planes were carried by 6 aircraft carriers heading toward Pearl Harbor. Meanwhile, at Pearl Harbor, the US forces included 8 battleships, 59 anti-aircraft ships, several submarines, and 390 aircraft. The US had enough firepower to defend against Japan, but only if they had prior information about the attack. Japan, however, kept its plans completely secret. Japanese commanders ordered their forces to avoid any wireless communication during the mission. The Japanese fleet traveled about 8,000 kilometers and stopped just 370 kilometers from Pearl Harbor. From there, their aircraft took off to launch the attack. The attack began on the morning of December 7th, 1941. At 7:57 a.m., 350 Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor in 2 waves. The first wave rained bullets and bombs on the base for 45 minutes, leaving massive destruction. Just as the Americans thought the attack was over, a second wave arrived 10 minutes later, causing even more devastation. In 1 hour and 15 minutes, Japan destroyed 20 vessels, including 8 battleships and over 300 aircraft. The smoke from the explosions covered the sky, turning day into night. During this chaos, Doris Miller, the cook, played a heroic role. While collecting laundry, he heard the siren. By the time he stepped outside, a Japanese torpedo had already hit his ship, injuring many, including the ship's captain. Miller alone moved the injured to safety and then manned an anti-aircraft gun to fire back at the Japanese planes. Despite having no formal training, he shot down 6 Japanese aircraft. For his bravery, Miller was awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest honor in the U.S. Navy. After the attack, Japan had unknowingly dragged the U.S. into World War II. The very next day, America declared war on Japan. For the next 3 months, the U.S. focused on rebuilding its naval base. In April 1942, the U.S. launched its first counterattack, bombing Japan's capital, Tokyo. This marked America's entry into World War II. Over the next 4 years, the US and Japan fought fiercely. Japan grew weaker but refused to surrender. Finally, in August 1945, the US played its final card. Summer was in full force in Japan's Hiroshima city. It was a pleasant day. The sky was blue and the sun was shining. A typical Monday morning. At 8 a.m., people were arriving at their offices. Children were at school in their first period of the day. Meanwhile, some people spotted an American Boeing B-29 aircraft in the sky. At 8:15 a.m., something fell out of the aircraft. From a distance, people couldn't figure out what it was. The thing falling out of the aircraft. Not even in their dreams could they have imagined that it was an atomic bomb. 43 seconds. It was in free fall for exactly 43 seconds. After that, in the blink of an eye, it was all over. Thousands of people in the city saw a blinding light in the last seconds of their life. The bomb blast created an instant fireball, as if the sun descended on Earth. The temperatures reached 4,000 degrees Celsius. In the blink of an eye, 80,000 people were killed. A Boeing B-29 Superfortress aircraft dropped a 4,400-kilogram atomic bomb called Little Boy on Hiroshima. Within seconds, a massive explosion destroyed the city, killing tens of thousands of people. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the U.S. dropped another atomic bomb, Fat Man, on Nagasaki. This bomb, weighing 4,670 kilograms, wiped out most of the city. These 2 nuclear attacks forced Japan to surrender, bringing World War II to an end. However, they left behind unimaginable destruction and suffering, marking one of the darkest chapters in human history.